It pissed him off that they built that kind of connection while Janus worked 2 shifts, and it only made him madder that Uncle Ivan was probably right. Hard to be right from inside a jail cell, though. Janus crossed his arms and leaned against the kitchen counter. I'm not sure either of us should be taking advice from him right now. Callie shrugged. And I think you're too hard on him. He took care of us in his own way. He probably thought he was taking care of us by hitting that be easy now, Janus said with a small grin. His sister could cuss up a storm, even if she deserves it. Callie stuck her tongue out at him, and they laughed. It felt good to have something to laugh about. Hey, Janus. Sup, bug. You ever wonder what happened to Prometheus Base? I mean, if we'd grown up there, we'd be normal, right? I wonder what that would have been like sometimes. I wonder about that too, Janus said. Unlike Callie, he did have some memories left of Prometheus, although they were the vague memories of a child. He thought his parents had been important, or doing important work, and he had a child's nostalgia for the life they might have had. He had no idea why that time had ended, and Uncle Ivan had always refused to discuss it. Janus wasn't sure what was worse, having lost their chance at a normal life, or not knowing why they'd lost it. I need to eat something and go to bed, Janus said. You should too. I already ate, and I've got work, Callie said, pulling her goggles out of their carrying case. Janus realized she hadn't been working on her secret project when he came home. She must have been worried. Janus pulled a food packet from the cupboard. Your boyfriend was with us at the bar. What? What? Who? Yeah. Ryler, Dodd. He was right there with me. You're lucky he's not here giving us a sermon on strength through adversity. Except maybe you'd like that. Okay, for one, he's not my boyfriend. But you have a big crush on him. For the void's sake, brothers are the worst. That was one stupid post 2 years ago. I was a kid. And now I'm a young adult, and I know better. Also, is he okay? Really? The early shift workers tried to maintain their usual ribbing and ball busting. But there was a pall over the banter. Janus had read the news feeds beyond the usual resentment of immigrants. People were scared about the heat levels, a sign of deeper problems with dome maintenance. The incident with Lyra set them off. There had been several assaults, and 2 large fights broke out before DomeSec could enforce the curfew. The outsiders, used to clinging to each other for protection, surprised some would-be victimizers by fighting back. They gave as good as they got, and as many people ended up in the hospital or the holding cells on both sides. Both sides blamed Janus and his uncle. Janus had never fit in, but that morning he felt particularly alone. Since no one wanted to talk to him, he locked his helmet in place and headed out early. He made it most of the way to the airlock when Meg, his shift supervisor, pinged him on his suit comm. Damn it, Janus! Slow down. He turned around to see his shift supervisor. She was shorter than him by a head, but her personality made up for the height differential. She pointed to his helmet. And mind unsealing it? Janus sighed. He should have more than enough oxygen for the shift. But it was still wasteful. What's up? He asked, popping the seal. I need you to sit this shift out. What? What? Why? Just take a day off, Janus. Think of it as a vacation. Go spend time with your sister, or see if you can find out when your uncle is going to be arraigned. Same for main shift. Barry and I talked. Go home. Janus just stared at her. He'd gotten up early, despite the lack of sleep, the worry, and the slight headache, and checked the maintenance logs. He planned his route so he could knock out some quick fixes between actual maintenance tasks. It wasn't a full optimization, because that would have meant ignoring systems that genuinely needed fixing, but he'd been willing to compromise, to do what he had to. I can't lose this job. Meg looked at him with pity in her eyes. It's not like that. Things are just tense after last night. And tense people say and do stupid things. I don't want an accident or a fight I can avoid by giving you a day off. It's probably overdue. She ran her hand over her short, steel gray hair. Truth is, they could probably use someone like you over in sector maintenance. I hear they're up to their asses in coolant failures. Janus looked Meg in the eyes, trying to decide whether she meant it, whether she was really trying to help him, or if she was just trying to make her life easier at his expense. It would be easy for her to forget this conversation, say he missed work, and get him fired or reassigned like Lyra had. Uncle Ivan and Callie both thought he was too trusting, politically naive. His uncle had said. Janus's mom and dad had been naive too. Given the opportunity to help each other, humans banded together for the common good. That was what his mother had thought. And now Prometheus Space was dead. You're not alone, Janus, Meg said. There are people trying to help you, if you'll let us. I've talked to Barry. He's really sticking his neck out for you, and I'm going to tell Domesec about Lyra going after you in the locker room yesterday. I don't know if it will make a difference, but we're trying anyway. Okay, Janus said, letting his shoulders drop. His uncle was probably right. But even if most of the people in the dome were selfish, that didn't mean they all were. And Janus didn't want to live in a world where everyone was an enemy waiting to be discovered. He was powerless, but that didn't mean he had to live without hope. I'll head back to the locker room and see what I can do for my family. Good man, Meg said, punching him in the shoulder. And listen, I know this sucks. Better than dead, Janus said with a shrug. A smile spread across her face. What? Janus asked. Sometimes it's very obvious you're from Prometheus Base. He wasn't exactly sure what she meant by that. I'll see you tomorrow, Janus. Better believe it. You know you're going to fall behind on quotas without me. Meg smirked. Meg, we'll have to find a way to go on without you. The survivor provides. The void takes, Janus said automatically, and headed back to the lockers. A note from the author, Void Runner. Sci-Fi survival adventure. Lore: Prometheus Base, while Prime Dome is known as the largest and fastest growing settlement on Irkalla. Prometheus Base was once a beacon of science and industry. 3 generations, best and brightest, made frequent trips to the northern settlement to explore the limits of human performance and to uncover humanity's past. The collapse came without warning. Many now view Prometheus Base as a symbol of hubris that not only doomed its inhabitants, but all those who believed in what it stood for. Others believe the spirit of Prometheus lives on, although no expedition has successfully reached the ruins and returned to tell of the settlement's fate. Chapter 5. Invarian. Hab Unit, Prime Dome. Planet. Irkalla. Survivors Refuge 4452.210. Interstellar, would you stop apologizing? Callie said, on the verge of exasperation. I'm going to be fine. Janus looked at the sector checkpoint uneasily. Since he had the day off, he decided to take Callie to school early, just in case there were problems related to last night. Things seemed normal on this side, but if something happened in Sector 1, Janus wouldn't be able to pass through and help. Callie punched him in the arm. Hey! I mean it. I'm going to be fine. I'm sure you will. You're as tough as armor glass. And as vicious as a trilith, Callie said, nodding. You know triliths are only this big, right? Janus said, holding his hands about 20 centimeters apart. They're about as dangerous as a rabid chicken. I had one bite my boot one time. Uncle Ivan says they get bigger out in the dust. Janus ruffled her hair. Uncle Ivan says a lot when he drinks. It's going to be strange talking to him, sober. Just make sure you get to him, Callie said, walking toward the line. Bring him home. I will, Janus said, smiling, although they both knew it wasn't going to be that simple. The facade dropped as soon as she was out of sight. They were in trouble. Uncle Ivan didn't have a steady job, so the only people Janus could think of to vouch for him were other degenerates. Meg said she'd tell Domesec about the incident yesterday, and Janus was sure someone in the crowd had recorded the fight through their retinal implant. Lyra had crossed the entire bar just to let Janus know she'd gotten him busted. There was little doubt she'd provoked the fight, but Ivan made it physical, and she was still a candidate to be the lead aspirant second. If she couldn't participate in this year's trials, it would be exile for Uncle Ivan for sure. And Janus couldn't take care of himself and Callie on just his salary. Uncle Ivan didn't get a paycheck, but he always scrounged up a few credits a month to cover his drinking and a little more besides that. Janus never asked how, and his uncle didn't share, probably stripping construction sites for parts or helping traders get contraband past Domesec. Whatever it was enough to keep them barely afloat. With Uncle Ivan gone, Janus and Callie would have to move to a smaller hab unit, drop even further down the resource allocation ladder, and there was no way Callie kept her scholarship after that. Here's hoping Lyra has thick skin, Janus thought. A busted lip would be fine. A nosebleed would do her good. A broken nose or major bruising would be the end of them. He sighed. First things first. Talk to Ivan. It took him 10 minutes to make it to the detention center, but it was visible from anywhere in the sector. Prime Dome was laid out like an ancient Earth carriage wheel, with 6 sectors and a central hub. The detention center was also the checkpoint from Sector 6 to the hub, and it was a fortress, 4 above-ground stories of gray, reinforced concrete with armored doors, observation platforms, and riot control points that Domesec could use to fire stun rounds or pain fields into an angry crowd. Sectors 4, 5, and 6 were already the designated living areas of the Dome's working class. But the fortress between Sector 6 and the hub emphasized the uncrossable divide between the outsiders and Dome elites. It was also where the lower-ranked Domesec officers had their quarters. They doubled the watch outside the front doors, and Janus could feel the tension radiating off the troopers. They were wearing light riot gear, full-face helmets, stab vests, and shock rods, but without the heavier plates and limb protection. It would have been intimidating as hell if Janus hadn't recognized one of them. Corporal Tony Vasquez, Barry's cousin. He didn't know him well, but they'd shaken hands and talked over a beer once or twice. "Hey, Tony," Janus, the big trooper, said, giving him a deadpan look through the visor of his helmet. "You here to check on your uncle?" "Yeah." "What a yes." "Hope he hasn't been giving you too much trouble." Vasquez shrugged. "He's been pretty calm, aside from asking for better food and a ration of beer. Got bigger problems." "You mean the fights?" Janus asked. Vasquez was about to answer when one of his colleagues cut in. "We're on duty, outsider. Head inside or beat it." Vasquez turned to look at his fellow officer with the friendliness of a rock slide. "I look like I need your help, trooper." "Piss off, Corporal. You heard the lieutenant at the morning brief." Aloof and professional. The corporal shrugged and turned back to Janus. "Sorry, man. But he's not wrong. It's not just regular fights. We're used to breaking up a few tussles. But there's never been so much hate in them before. Everyone's wound up, and the pressure's got to go somewhere. Problem is, everyone's picking sides. Primers think DomeSec sided with the outsiders, and outsiders think we're oppressing them on Primers' orders. Sector Sixers, gotta stick together," Janus offered, hoping that was the middle ground, but the corporal shook his head. "It's not about sectors either. There's dumb law, or there's the void. Higher-ups aren't playing with this one." Janus swallowed. That didn't bode well for Uncle Ivan. "Go on inside," Vasquez said. "Desk sergeant will get you sorted out. She's expecting you." "Oh. It's gotta take your deposition about what happened. Don't mess around. Tell them the truth, and you'll be fine." "Right," Janus said, looking at the DomeSec officer's face to see if he was being honest, joking, or lying through his teeth. It kept coming back to the same question. Were there people he could trust here? People who wouldn't screw him over for their own benefit, or in Lyra's case, just for the hell of it? In a way, Vasquez's attempt to be professionally neutral was a positive sign, even if it didn't help him in the moment. It meant someone was putting the law over favoritism, even if it was out of fear. "Thanks." "Don't mention it," Vasquez said, but he was already looking past Janus at the crowd. Janus went inside, feeling something like a change in pressure as the armored doors closed behind him, even though he knew there was no differential. Now that he was inside the detention center, it was that much easier for them to lock him in, or march him and his uncle to the nearest airlock. The center's entrance made Janus think of an ancient Earth castle, with a narrow tunnel that could be sealed by blast doors at either end. There were allowances made for post-Exodus technology, with security camera bubbles in opposite corners and recessed shock turrets installed in the floor. Janus made his way through to the processing room. The walls and the floor were a spotless white, contrasting sharply with the DomeSec officers, void black and dust gray. They stared at him as he approached the desk sergeant. "Maybe I should let Uncle Ivan handle this like he said he would," Janus thought. All of this felt like a big mistake. The desk sergeant looked down at him from the raised, armored glass enclosed desk, her eyes glowing blue as she accessed facial recognition. "Janus Invarian? I'm aboard you, sure. Scan in, please." Janus put his left wrist in front of the scanner, and it flashed green in acknowledgement. "I'm here to see my uncle. Later." "For now?" There are some people who want to talk to you. Follow the projection to interview. Room 3. A holographic arrow traced its way to the right, stopping at an armored door labeled interrogation rooms that made Janus's stomach do a standing backflip. The door opened as soon as he walked up to it and sealed closed behind him, trapping him in an empty hallway with 8 doors. "Hello?" Janus said. Janus said. The holographic arrow flashed insistently, leading him to the second door on the left, which opened and shut behind him. There was no pad or scanner to open it again, and no access panel to pry open even if he'd had tools. He was now locked into a white room, whose only discernible feature was a white table and a chair on each side. Janus sat down and waited. Then he waited some more. He called out, and no one answered. It was a full 20 minutes before the door slid open. Noiselessly, and a black and gray uniformed lieutenant walked into the room with a portable terminal in her hand. "Thank you for waiting, Mr. Invarian,"